What's up, Berserkers? Welcome to another Theory Hammer Tactica, where today we are talking about the World Eaters, also known as the Eaters of Worlds to some. I heard that once. Maybe I just made it up right now. Who knows? But I'm KevBot, obviously. And we're going to take an in-depth look at the World Eaters, so eat the like button or something. Thunderhammer the subscribe button, Nurgle's bell icon, leave a comment about the World Eaters here and let me know anything that I missed, and of course check out our other videos as well. Also, check the video description because it has the winner of the 500 sub giveaway, and if it's you, you're going to want to email me. Alright, so we're just going to start off by going over the army rule again. So, the army rule is Blessing of Khorne. Here's what it does. At the start of the battle round, you roll 8 dice, and you can pick 2 of the different effects over there depending on what the dice roll is. There's a whole bunch of different things here, but on any doubles, you can either get plus 2 inches to your move, or 6 up Feel No Pain, or plus 1 to your Feel No Pain if you already have it. There's some things in the index, like the 8-bound, that already have a 6 up Feel No Pain, so this can actually get you to a 5 up Feel No Pain, which makes them much, much more tanky. If you roll a double 3 up, which you should, you can get Sustained 1. Now you can pick 2 of these effects. You roll 8 dice, and you get to pick and choose which of these effects you get. Mathematically speaking, you should be able to get all of these, so let's just keep going. So on a double 3 up, you can get Sustained 1 on your melee weapons specifically. Did you think you had shooting in this army? No. On double 4 ups, or on any triples, you can get a 4 up Fight on Death, which I don't love, but double 5 ups or any triple, you can get lethals, and then any double 6s or a triple 4 up, you can go with Advance and Charge. This gives you a ton of variability. There's also things that allow you to manipulate this, like Jakhals. There's also a relic, or an enhancement they call it now, that lets you just completely re-roll the entire roll. So at a minimum, you're always going to get at least 1 double. So you'll always at least have plus 2 to your move, or you'll have a 6 up Feel No Pain. And these are some of the ones that you're going to want the most anyway. Like I'm assuming it's going to be plus 2 move, Advance, and Charge most of the time. It's very situational though. There are times when you'd like to have lethals, there's times when you'd like to have sustained, there's probably times when you want to have fights on death. But mathematically, you should be able to get all of these. You'll automatically have a double because you're rolling 8 dice. 5-ish of them should be a 3+. 4 should be a 4+, and so you should be able to pick any of your Blessing of Khorne rolls or rules to use that turn. And that covers all the different abilities, all those different possibilities, the 3 that I just mentioned. So you should be able to get really whatever you need each turn, and then you have ways to manipulate it. So actually a very good army rule. I really like the World Eaters in terms of just how they perform and just kind of how they work. They're very straightforward, but not necessarily simple to play. And so that is our army rule. Now, we don't have a codex yet, but we only have 1 detachment rule because of that, which is actually still pretty good. Plus 1 strength and plus 1 attack when you charge. That's big. That means that all of your stuff is getting pushed to like strength 11, strength 15, which isn't really important, but the plus 1 attack on all of your melee weapons, that's gigantic because you just hit so hard in combat now. Detachment rule we're not going to spend too much time on. It's really not all that compared to the army rule, and getting the plus 1 strength is fine, but it's really that plus 1 attack. So just assume that you have plus 1 attack almost all the time. So we're going to move on from the detachment rule because it's very straightforward. Just assume everything has an extra attack. So let's go over some of the units that you're definitely going to see in a World Eaters army, or that you're going to want to take if you play the World Eaters. The first thing is going to be Angron, of course, because Angron is just a powerhouse. I mean, look at his stats there. Toughness 11, 2 up save, 16 wounds. He's got a 4 up invuln. And then look at his melee weapons, because he doesn't have any guns. But his melee weapons, he's got 8 attacks, which is really 9 attacks at strength 17, AP4, D6 plus 2 damage. He's just going to murder whatever he gets into contact with. I mean, that's just an outrageous profile there. Then, of course, you can have Angron coming back with his Reborn in Blood ability. So if you roll 666s on a Blessing roll, you can just put him back in reserve with his full wounds remaining. Pretty interesting there. And then, of course, he's got his Wrathful Presence. At the start of your charge phase, you select a Wrathful Presence, and this is what you get. You can either add 1 to charge rolls, you can get plus 1 to your attacks characteristic if you're below starting strength, or you can just re-roll the hit roll. Reroll hit roll is probably what you're going to go with most of the time. Obviously, your Glorious Bloodletting, your +1 to charge rolls, that's also very, very useful. But if you're going with Advance and Charge that turn, if you're getting +2 move, you probably don't need it, and you're going to make much more use out of Infectious Slaughter for that rerolls to hit. Other than those things, this guy, he's what, like 415 points. He's going to kill something very big, very scary before he goes away, and then he has the chance to just come back to life. And he can fly across the table at 14 inches. It could be 16 if he gets the +2 move. He could be advancing and charging. You have an auto-advancing 6 strat, which we'll get to in a moment. But there's just a whole lot of stuff that Angron's going to do for you. And so Angron is really the linchpin of the army. He's a huge damage-dealing unit. He's very tanky with his 2-up, 4-up, and toughness 11 with 16 wounds. He can be -1 damage as well with a different strat. So getting through Angron is actually pretty challenging sometimes. And yeah, he is going to mince through things, and he gives a nice little buff to your army. So just about every World Eater's army that I've ever seen has Angron in it. Now, next we have the Eightbound, another very iconic unit for this faction. They move 9, they're toughness 6 with 3 wounds, they've got a 5-up feel no pain, they do have a 3-up save, but they've got scout 6 inches, which is awesome, because this unit is scary. Let's take a look at its melee weapons. Now, they're all equipped with these Eightbound Eviscerators, so they all have 7 attacks at basically strength 6, AP 2, and damage 2 when they charge. We've got 7 attacks a pop with rerolls from Angron, and that's going to be a whole lot of attacks at strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. And then we have the Lacerator on the champion guy. 4 attacks at strength 9, AP 2, 3 damage. Now, if they're being bullies, and they're attacking people that are already down, if they're below half, they re-roll the wound roll. Pretty awesome when you have twin linked on all your stuff. That makes your damage output significantly higher, but this unit for 140 points for 3, a little expensive, but again, 3 wounds apiece at toughness 6, they move 9, they do scout. There's ways to make them -1 damage. They also have the ability to get that advance and charge. So, pretty nice little unit. Not nearly as crazy though as the Exalted Eightbound. So let's just go over them next, because they are the real powerhouses. These guys come with a 6-up feel no pain. They can also deep strike. Their profile is the exact same. So toughness 6, 3 wounds, 5-up invuln, 9-inch move. All that is the same. They do have a weird little ability, which is that each time an enemy unit within 6 inches is selected to fall back, it takes a leadership test. If it fails, they have to remain stationary. That is game-changing sometimes, legitimately. Legitimately game-changing, because there are times when you really need to fall back so that you can shoot at that thing that's in combat. And, well, if you can't, then you basically just get fucked. So, 155 points for 3 of them. You're paying a pretty penny for them, for sure. Now, your Exalted Eightbound and your regular Eightbound, and probably your Khorne Berzerkers, are the main damage-dealing things that you're going to have in your army. So we'll get to this a little bit later when we talk about kind of how the army plays, but you've got to make sure you can keep these things alive before they get into combat, because once they get into combat, they will rip right through something, and you need to make sure that they're doing as much damage as possible. Let's go over their melee weapons. They all have Eightbound Eviscerators. 5 attacks, strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. So 6 attacks, strength 7, AP 2, 2 damage when you charge. They also have Eightbound Chain Fist, which is 3 attacks, strength 14, AP 3, 2 damage though. A little disappointed that it's 2 damage, but hey, you're gonna get 4 attacks with that thing. You get reroll hits from Angron. Your strength 14, you're actually strength 15, but you're getting 4 attacks there because you're charging. You're just gonna be able to put out a ton of damage on something with this, especially with reroll hits. And then you can give the champion guy the paired Eightbound Chain Fist just to give him twin links with 5 attacks and then 6 on the charge. Not bad there. But this unit can become very, very, very hard to kill when that 5-up feel no pain, or when that 6-up feel no pain becomes a 5-up feel no pain, and they have -1 damage, and there's a 4-up invuln aura nearby from like a Daemon Prince or something. Yeah, they start getting real hard to kill at that point. But these things are mean, they're fast, they move 9. If you're +2 to your move, they're moving 11. They are infantry, they just move right through walls. They can advance and charge if you get that up. You can auto-advance them 6. That's just a huge threat range from a unit that can do a ton of damage. And it really, while it is expensive, it can take some punishment in return when you stack all those things up together. Next, let's talk about a unit that's not nearly as crazy, but still useful nonetheless. And that is going to be the good old classic Khorne Berzerkers. They're a marine profile, through and through. They do have OC2, which means that they are battle line. They do come with grenades, so they can do a little bit of damage with the grenade strat there. And they do have, of course, the Blood Surge move, which we all know about. When they get attacked after their enemy unit has done shooting, they can make a Blood Surge move, d6 inches. They can also take an Icon of Khorne, which is great because the Icon of Khorne allows you to manipulate one of the dice whenever you make a Blood or a Blessing of Khorne roll. So if you roll a bunch of ones, you can be like, you know what, I don't want this one. I've already got 3 doubles over here. Let me re-roll this one. Oh, look, it's a 6. Cool. It lets you manipulate the dice a little bit more, but they have to be within range of an objective marker that you control when you make the Blessing roll. So pretty good to have just if they're in your backfield or, on an objective on the side or something like that when you do make that Blood Surge move, because the Blood Surge, I keep calling it a Blood Surge, the Blessing of Khorne happens at the beginning of the battle round. We'll discuss the implications of that a little later on, but it does happen at that time, so it can be a little weird with how it procs stuff. But yeah, you're talking 90 points for 5 Berserkers, put them in a Rhino, move them up there, put them on an objective. It's a little more difficult to deal with a Rhino that has a combat unit inside than it is to deal with a Rhino that has a shooting unit inside, because your positioning is different. If you don't get rid of that combat unit that's in that Rhino, you're in a bad spot. If the Rhino's put in a spot where the guys can get out in a safe position where they're not going to be seen, you're in a really bad spot, because now you moved your unit up to be able to see this Rhino, you killed the Rhino, you got closer to it, and now the guys inside are just going to kill you. So, Khorne Berzerkers, great unit. Their melee is also pretty nice. 5 attacks at strength 6 AP 1, because when they charge, +1 strength and attack. You're going to get that Coordinate Eviscerator in there as well. It's going to be 4 attacks at strength 9, so pretty good there. And for 90 points, or 180 if you want to take 10, I just think the unit is pretty good. These are also really helpful to be able to tear through screens, because they have a ton of attacks at a decent strength and, AP 1, so most screens are, 4 up, 5 up save type things. Even when it's a little bit more tanky than that, you're still going to be able to rip through that with that many attacks. Even 5 of these guys, that's like 20 attacks, not including the Eviscerator, which is going to be 24. If you're near Angron, you're rerolling hits. There's just a volume of attacks is very, very high for your Khorne Berzerkers, and so you will see them kind of cleave through some lighter infantry stuff, even up to Space Marines, but nothing more than that. Again, they are only 90 points, so they're not going to kill everything forever, but let's next talk about the Rhino real quick and briefly, because Rhinos, transports in general in this edition are super duper good. It gets your guys across the table safer, faster, and gets them into positions where they want to be. They're also great for just being on objectives. You put a Rhino on an objective, your opponent either does one of 2 things. Either they drive up onto the objective and put other stuff on there and take it away from you, or they destroy the Rhino, your guys get out, and then you control the objective again. So Rhinos are always going to be good in this edition up until they change how transports work, which I don't think is going to happen. And so the Rhino, the Humble Rhino, it's good in just about every index, every codex in which you can take it. Take the Rhino, put your guys inside it, drive up, get onto objectives, and just be cool. Let's move on to some of the other characters. There aren't very many in here, but we do need to talk about a couple of them. The first one being Kharn. Kharn's melee is hilarious. He has 9 attacks on the charge at strength 7 on the charge, AP 2, and a flat 3 damage. He's not particularly tanky. He's got 5 wounds with a 3-up save. He's got a 4-up invuln. He can lead Khorne Berzerkers. I think that's all he can lead, in fact. He fights on death automatically. He can hurt people around him, but he gives out reroll hits and wounds of 1 to the unit that he's leading. So you put him with some Khorne Berzerkers and they really chew through some stuff. But I would take him simply for his Gore Child. That's good. It's 9 attacks, strength 7 AP 2, and a flat 3 damage. Just by himself, he will kill stuff. So he also does have a plasma pistol thing that's always overcharged. But you take Kharn because of his combat output. He's 100 points. He's not very expensive for what he does. But he'll get in there and he'll just crush an entire unit by himself. Next, we move on to another one of the characters, the Master of Execution. So this guy's hilarious. He gives the unit that he's with fights first, so it makes them completely unchargeable. And then each time that he himself targets a character, reroll hits, reroll wounds. He has a precision weapon with 6 attacks on the charge at strength 8, AP 2, damage 2, and devastating wounds. Reroll hits, reroll wounds. 100 points for this guy. I think he is a little overcosted, personally. But yeah, when you can fly, just 5 Berserkers in there, Master of Executions with them. Oh look, there's a character in there. Here's 6 attacks with precision, hitting on 2s, rerolling hits, wounding on probably 3s or 2s if you go up to strength 8, rerolling 1s, and just cutting them down. just cutting them the fuck down with this guy. This guy is really, really nice to have. I really like the Master of Executions. And you can turn Kharn into a Master of Executions by just giving him precision for 1 CP. So Master of Executions, pretty good. One of the better characters in here, especially when you can give him some enhancements, which we'll get to. We'll then talk about Lord Invocatus. He is one of their named characters. Now this guy's awesome because he gives, 2 units basically, scout 6 inches. So what I would probably do with this guy is put him with regular 8-bound because they already have scout and he also has scout. He can lead them as well, so he can just run 6 regular 8-bound up the table with a scout 6 inch, and then he can give scout 6 inches to 2 other things. It could be Jakhals, could be other 8-bound, like Exalted 8-bound. He can give other stuff the ability to scout, which is always nice to have. And he's 140 points. He's pretty good in combat. I mean, he's got a devastating wounds weapon as well. It's on the charge, it's 8 attacks, it's strength 7. It's fine. I don't think your extra attack weapons gain extra attacks when you charge, so I don't think you gain anything on those. He also gives you the ability to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which you fell back. I don't know what in this army shoots and then charges, but he's going to let you charge. He's going to let you fall back and then charge, which is nice to have. But basically being able to put this guy with just a unit of 8-bound, just moving them all up 6 inches and then going first, getting that +2 to move. He has to move around walls and stuff, but his friends can just move through the walls. They move 11 inches, maybe they advance and charge, I don't know, but you can just get this unit up into somebody's face really, really quickly, put -1 damage on it, make it really hard to kill. Potentially have a 5-up Feel No Pain up, although the regular 8-bound don't get that, they only get a 6-up. So I don't know, what would you guys do with this guy? I think you want to join a unit, right, because he can, but then you give scout to the other stuff. Exalted 8-bound also do have deep strike, so I'm not sure if you want to, you want to give him scout. What the fuck am I talking about? This guy's great. Lord Invocatus, giving scout to multiple units, having scout himself, being big and scary. I like it. And so that's going to do it for our characters. I mean, you got Kharn, he's just a good swingy character, he's cheap enough. You got the Master of Executions, he's more of a precision character, he just snipes out your other characters in combat. And then you got the Lord Invocatus, give a scout to, whatever, Jakhals, 8-bound, whatever. You can give it to Exalted 8-bound, any of that stuff. You can give it to Berzerkers, you can give it to all kinds of stuff. And he himself has scout. So you got basically 4 good characters here. You got the Master of Executions, the Lord Invocatus, Kharn, and of course Angron. We should do, let's give an honorable mention to the Daemon Prince, because he did get changed and he is pretty damn expensive. He's 200 points, but he gives out an aura of 4-up invuln to anybody that has it. So it gives out a 5-up invuln, but if you already have an invuln, it gives it +1. So he's going to be near 8-bound if you're taking him. But even just giving Berzerkers and Jakhals and that kind of stuff a 5-up invuln, it's pretty nice. This guy's also hilarious when he charges. He gets dev wounds on his weapon, which, 7 attacks at strength 11 when you charge, AP 2, 3 damage flat with dev, it's pretty good. He could also give this guy the enhancement for half damage so that he basically doesn't die and can keep giving out his aura to different stuff. He's just nice to have. He's just a beat stick, kind of like the rest of the characters in this army. But the fact that he gives out like an actual durability buff, very, very nice. He's just probably too expensive to actually field, right? I don't know. Tell me down below. And I think we just have one other unit that we really want to talk about, which is the Jakhals, because the Jakhals are pretty cool. They're one of your little infantry units that can kind of just, sit on your backfield. You don't need them to do too much. They don't cost you too many points. They're only 65 points for 10. No abilities, really. They get a 6-up Feel No Pain, but they don't have any scout or anything like that. But they can sticky objectives, which is awesome for a 65-point unit, and they can take an Icon of Khorne. Each time you make a Blessing of Khorne roll, if the bear is within range of an objective marker with the bear's unit, you can reroll one of those dice. So the same thing that the Berzerkers get, the Jakhals get as well. Things like this are important. You do need things in your backfield to be able to just screen so that people can't deep strike back there. Having sticky objectives is always really nice, and yeah, 65 points for this unit. That seems good to me. So that's pretty much all the units that are in the army that you care about, that I see in just about every list. Maybe not all of them together, but this list might have these units with a Rhino, the next list might have some different units without the Rhino, but overall, these units are going to be the ones that you're going to see in this army. Until they get a second wave of models, or until they get an actual index and just other stuff, this is what we got. So, now that we have an idea of some of the units that we're going to use, let's take a look at the strats. First one, Skulls for the Skull Throne. Straight up +1 to wound monsters and vehicles. just makes 8-bound and Angron wound anything on 2s basically because they're so high strength. There's nothing shiny about this stratagem. There's nothing, you know, ooh, wow, that's so crazy. It's very straightforward, very simple, and I love it. +1 to wound against anything that's a monster or a vehicle. You're gonna rip them apart at that point. Wounding them on 2s, just get out of here. So, that's applicable to just about anything. You could put that on Berserkers if you wanted to. You wouldn't, but you could. And so you're really going to end up using this on things like 8-bound, things like Angron, maybe even regular 8-bound, just because they're only strength 6 on the charge, so that +1 to wound, and they can get rerolls potentially, at least rerolls. Reroll 1s, maybe full rerolls, just depends. But getting rerolls on them, that's pretty good when they're +1 to wound. We then have Blood for the Blood God. This is great. You make a Blessing of Khorne roll, and then you just pick an effect. And this happens after you destroy an enemy unit. So, you know, it's your turn, you charge up, you kill an enemy unit, the opponent, you know, you went first, because your blood thingy happens for the whole battle round. So you went first, you charged the unit, you killed something, you instantly get to make a Blessing of Khorne roll, and you just get to pick one of the effects. You can actually have, I think you can have 3 effects up with this, right? But it's also very nice because things like Jakhals, things like the Khorne Berzerkers, if they're on objectives, they can help you re-roll some of these dice. This can also help Angron come back. If Angron dies turn 1 or turn 2 or whatever, this then happens, you charge into combat, you then make a Blessing of Khorne roll. Let's just say you roll 666s, let's just say you don't roll 666s. You have other ways to manipulate it, so you're like, okay, this Jackal unit here will re-roll this 1 dice. Oh look, there's the 666 I needed. I guess Angron comes back to life after I just killed your guardsman squad or whatever it is. So it's really, really funny, and it's also very helpful to just like randomly get, you know, +1 to your Feel No Pain or 6 up Feel No Pain after you destroy an enemy unit on your opponent's turn, like going into their turn if you went first for the battle round. It's just kind of weird because of how that procs. Like if you went second and then charged, then the effect like instantly resets and it's useless. So if you happen to kill something in the opponent's turn and you went second, then it works. Like if your opponent charged you and you killed them, and then you have bottom turn where you still get your entire turn for having your blessings up, then it could work. But again, it's weird when it procs. But this is just, I think, mostly hilarious just to have a chance to get Angron back. But otherwise, you have to use this at the right time, so keep that in mind. The next one you have, I've mentioned this one, is Khorne Cares Not. This is -1 damage only in combat though, but this makes Angron close to impossible to kill. This makes 8-bound very durable when paired with a 4-up invuln for a prince, and then your blessing for a 5-up Feel No Pain. It takes 8 wounds from a 2 damage weapon at AP 2 to kill a single 8-bound model when those different things are up. It takes 4 wounds from a 3 damage weapon at AP 2 to kill a single 8-bound when all those things are up. The last one that we're going to talk about, they have more, but the last one we're going to talk about, because it's actually good, is Apoplectic Frenzy. I think I said that right. And the only reason why I'm bringing this one up, normally nowadays, because of Pariah Nexus and with the changes to Assault, gaining Assault and that kind of stuff is not nearly as useful. This doesn't do that, but this gives you an auto advance 6 inches. And so when you have advance and charge up, this becomes very, very good. You can combo this to get like a 16-inch move on 8-bound after scouting 6 inches. You could combo this with Angron for a 22-inch move and then charge. So while again not very pretty, very straightforward and very helpful. We then move on to the relics. First one is the Favorite of Khorne. This changed just a bit. This is a once per game thing now. I think before it was like 6 months ago when they changed it, but you could just continue to use this every turn. Every time you made a Blessing of Khorne roll, I'm pretty sure you could just re-roll that shit. This is a once per game Blessing re-roll, which is still pretty good. I'm not sure if it's an auto take anymore because you have other ways to manipulate that roll, but 20 points, pretty good to just re-roll once a game if you get a really terrible roll. But again, I'm not sure if it's auto-takey anymore. The Berserker Glaive, though, this is pretty hilarious. This is 25 points. This is +1 attack and +1 to your damage. It makes a prince 8 attacks on the charge at strength 11 and 4 damage with dev wounds. It makes a Master of Execution 7 attacks on the charge with damage 3, dev wounds, precision, and reroll hits and wounds. So yeah, pretty good. Pretty good stuff. It just puts some of your characters over the top in terms of damage. And that's really all you care about here, because all you want to do is get in there and slap people. Then the last one we have here is the Helm of Brazen Iron. I did mention this before. This is the one that gives you, it halves the damage that you take. So it's really good on a prince, or it's really good on like a mounted lord. I think you'll probably take this if you're going with the Prince with the 4 bin things, really like leaning into that. I'm not sure that's the way you do it though, but if you are doing that, you definitely take this because that helps keep the Prince alive much, much longer, keeps his aura up much, much longer. Obviously, this is a good thing to take on him. So it's either that one or the Berserker Glaive. So I think what you do is take the Helm of Brazen Ire on the Demon Prince, and then you take the Berserker Glaive on the Master of Executions and go chop, 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 chop. And so that kind of covers that. But yeah, it's pretty simple the way that this army works. It runs towards you and it kills you. But you can't commit too soon with this army because if you do, your expensive things are going to die. It's like, 3 8-bound are 155 points or something, like 140 for the regulars, and the regulars don't put out nearly as much damage. Now, the way that I've seen this army win is really when your opponent overextends. But because you have advance and charge missiles, and you have Angron and such like that, you can stage very well, and you can hide, and then you can fly out, 9 or 11 inches, plus that advance, and then charge and just kill everything. I would likely move Berserkers like up around the sides, just to try to see what people do, and just try to get them a little closer. Like I would likely move Berserkers up around the sides and try to get people to like get closer in order to see them, and then swing in with some of my heavy hitter stuff. Like meanwhile, Angron can kind of keep people honest as well because he can move really far and just absolutely annihilates anything he touches. He can also give out a +1 charge aura if he's near like deep striking 8-bound or something like that. So overall, the army's, I'm gonna make a comparison here. I'm gonna say it's kind of like Custodes-ish. It wants to stage in the mid-board and then hit super hard the turns that matter and then deny the enemy points. And like they can kind of already sweep across objectives and just kill what's there. And so combat armies like this are always a little harder to pilot because they require an in-depth understanding of the fight and combat steps and everything that kind of goes with it. You really have to know how to use like pile-ins and consolidates to your advantage. So like destroying a unit, but then like moving either like into terrain or away to get cover, like maybe moving backwards towards an aura or whatever the case may be. You have to move towards an objective, but if you pre-plan things like that, you can kill the unit that's on the objective and then move like 3 inches like backward, if that makes sense, and then end up in a better spot. You can also use charging to move block, which I do all the time, and that's very important for a combat army. You can pile into units that you didn't charge. And if you set this up correctly, you can actually move block yourself so that other models can't get within base, meaning that they can move anywhere, and then they can just pile into the thing that you actually care about. And separately, if you can move block their shooting units, then you can put some of your other more valuable units in like more vulnerable positions, like places where you wouldn't normally put them, but they're safe because you move block something and now it doesn't have line of sight because it can't move past a wall or whatever. So without going on a massive tangent about how to combat and how like without having any examples on screen, like the point is that the army is very straightforward, but it also requires knowledge of the game, it requires wit, and it requires skill to play and win consistently with. I would likely run like 2 to 3 units of Exalted Eightbound, probably a 6-man regular one with like Lord Fuckface, like 2 to 3 units of Berserkers, probably with a Master of Executions, probably with Kharn, and then some Jakhals, and then Angron, of course. But can I even fit all that? I don't know, I feel like I can fit all that. The Jakhals are great because they can screen. Lord Fuckface and his unit can scout up. Angron probably hides. You got your Exalted Eightbound, they run up and hide. Zerkers run up and hide. Zerkers and some shit come out and kill stuff later. If your opponent overextends or doesn't screen well, maybe you just missile Angron up and Lord Fuckface, but you definitely don't go crazy with like the Exalted and everything else on turn 1 unless someone like seriously fucked up so hard that you're just gonna break them in half. So then that's when you do that. But we're assuming you're playing against people who play well, and so you need to pressure them without committing everything. You just gotta know the army so well that you know what units can and cannot do and like how to deploy and move and stage accordingly. You have things that can clear out screens and you can hit really hard as well if you need them. So you really have to make sure that you plan properly. But that's pretty much gonna do it for this breakdown of the World Eaters. If I missed anything, let me know down below and let me know what you guys are running for your World Eaters. Chain Glaive that like button, Thunder Hammer the subscribe button, obliterate Nurgle's bell, and check out our other videos as well. So, blood for the Blood God, skulls for the Skull Throne, and I'll see you crazy Berserkers in the next one.